On CTV News, the Japanese students start coming back and the future plans for Christchurch. Welcome to CTV News. I'm Rob Cope-Williams. It's bad news for those in the tourist industry, with figures dropping $7 million in the last couple of months.
February's earthquake caused a 25% fall in international guest nights and the loss of at least $7 million worth of accommodation in 1 week. The Statistics New Zealand Accommodation Survey for February shows international guest nights fell by 77,000 in Canterbury compared with a year ago. Figures released from Statistics New Zealand show there was a drop in overnight stays in hotels, motels, camping grounds and backpacker accommodation around the country. However, the largest fall was in Canterbury, which recorded a 14% drop, which is equivalent to 74,000 fewer guest nights than a year earlier. After the September earthquake, tourism in Canterbury took a huge dip. Now, with the city closed and images of the city beamed around the world, tourism is lower than before. We spoke to Tim Hunter about the hit on Canterbury tourism last week.
Well, it's been pretty big. Clearly those images broadcast around the world have had quite an impact on people's travel decisions. So over the last 2 months, March and April, we've seen arrivals into Christchurch Airport down about 30%. But we're seeing a much worse effect in terms of the number of visitors that are actually in the city. A lot of those people flying in, are just getting in a rental car or a car and going straight out. So they're certainly getting a holiday in the South Island, but we're not seeing quite as many in the city. So if you run a tourism business in Canterbury, business has been down for anything up to 50 to 70% over the last few months. So it's pretty tough.
As we reported last week, the Ministry of Economic Development, Christchurch City Council and Christchurch International Airport have now entered into a memorandum of understanding to help Christchurch and Canterbury tourism by giving it $1.6 million in funding, which is additional to core council funding of $2.2 million. Prime Minister John Key says the funding is designed to help Christchurch and Canterbury tourism stabilise its business and operations and rebuild existing tourism and travel activity. But the loss to the city will be higher because of other spending not happening as well. Tim told us the funding will help immensely.
Well, I think there's a couple of things we need to do. We really need to get the record straight, particularly internationally, that the entire city is not broken. For all of us that live here, we know damn well that half the city's in pretty good shape. Yes, we don't have a central city, so we've lost that sort of cultural and heritage experience. But we have a lot of tourism activities that are up and running. We've got about 26 at the moment. And most of our iconic ones are back in action. So it's really important that we tell people, particularly overseas, that it's okay to come to Christchurch, to use Christchurch Airport, stay at least a night before you head off around the South Island, and then we'll get some of those visitors back in and spending some money in our economy.
In the North Island, guest nights were up 1% on a year ago to 1.9 million and was led by Auckland, which was up 6.1%. Auckland has had the strongest rise of any region in the last 7 accommodation surveys. About 75% of Christchurch's hotel beds are out of action in damaged hotels. Only 10 of 33 hotels are now open.
In the meantime, local businesses are banding together to look at the future of our city in a positive light.
So a number of groups have formed since the earthquake. Some of these had formed after the September 4, some of them are brand new, and one of those is the Canterbury Business Leaders Group. It's made up of CEOs or leaders from around 175 of the top Canterbury businesses. The chairman is Don Elder from Solid Energy, and they've got an executive that's made up of Mary Devine from Ballantyne's, Grant Close from Placemakers, Bill Luff from CDC, Steve Wakefield from Deloitte. So there's a really interesting group of people belonging to the overall group.
So how did this come about? Obviously there's a good reason for it, but what was the reason?
Well, Don got together with some of the other people that belong to the group, and they realised that they have a responsibility to play a big part in this recovery efforts. They represent around $5 to $10 billion of planned future investment in the region, and I don't think the impact of that can be underestimated. They have the ability to be able to do things quicker than a lot of organisations can because they're more agile and flexible. And so they've got a number of task groups that are working on projects now that they hope will be out in the marketplace very soon.
Okay. In terms of what's happening in the CBD, can you give us an update on the cordons and, you know, where can we go?
Yeah, sure. So we have been able to make a lot of progress over the last few weeks on getting people into the CBD. Obviously, a number of businesses that are within the red zone have been looking to just try and get in there and get some of their items out. Over 1,500 businesses have now had access, and on Thursday this week, Zone 6, which is that zone between Salisbury Street and Cambridge Terrace and between Durham and Barbados, will open up to businesses and residents, and on Friday that will open up to the general public. So that will be the first time a lot of people have got that close to town. There was a lot of damage done in the area, particularly in Colombo Street, and it will be a very different landscape to what people saw the last time they were in there.
But it's not just the main city that's looking better, so is the water and wastewater systems.
Since September, we've been in contact with overseas agencies, as well as working with University of Canterbury and the Centre for Advanced Engineering, looking at what we can do in underground assets to make them more flexible, more resilient to further aftershocks. You'll notice driving around the roads those annoying protrusions, manholes. So we're looking at some of those have floated, some of them the ground sunk around them. So we were looking at designs to try and neutralise those effects. They're not always easy to achieve, but the way we build things will be different. We're changing pipe materials in certain soil types in the city as part of the renewal program to provide more flexibility in the network.
What's the time frame to have this all finished by?
It'll be several years before all the works are completed. We made good progress on the city's wells, so we've got to re-drill a number of wells. We've still got about 19 wells that need repair. And we're probably up to 150 kilometres of water main to replace. And sewer, you know, that could be up around 300 or 400 kilometres. So there's a lot of work to do, but the priority is to get normal service back as soon as possible, and then it's much more tolerable for people to work while we undertake to live while we undertake the permanent repairs.
What's the progress report on, you know, clearing the sewers and getting wastewater out of the waterways?
We are making good progress on cleaning the sand and silt out of the sewers. We've got a large fleet of contractors here working on that right across the city. We're hoping by the end of this week we'll be able to go back to some suburbs and tell them that they can start using their toilets again and put the chemical toilet away. Yeah. Don't sell it, put it away.
Okay.
Because we you know, the situation's not over until we put in place the permanent repairs, and you know, the geotech and seismological engineers will tell you that there's still some risk of aftershocks, and that'll go on for some time. So you know, we have to stay prepared for that. But as we replace broken lines and get services back in place, then you know, life will get better for people. Currently,
what's the most affected area that you're still really working on?
Well, Bexley, Avonside, Dallington, Burwood, the areas that were hit pretty hard last time. There are some areas in Woolston that also have suffered quite a bit of underground damage around Jade Stadium, or AMI Stadium, sorry. And there are some other pockets, you know, more damaged areas than there were after the last quake. So just the energy that was in this last shake meant that more of the soils in the eastern side of the city liquefied, and so that's reflected in the damage we're facing. And the limitations on the households there? At the moment, where people have got chemical toilets, we're asking them to continue to use those chemical toilets. As I said, hopefully by the end of this week we'll start going out on a street-by-street basis in some of those areas and saying you can go back to using your toilet but keep your chemical toilet. So, and that'll be a phased program over the next couple of weeks, which reflects the effect the jetting operation's having. We're also making quite good progress at the wastewater treatment plant, so we have all our primary treatment process back online now. We're not getting as much sand into the plant as we were previously, so that's making life a little bit easier out there. And hopefully some of our secondary process, we'll be inspecting that today which hopefully will allow us to get more of the process train back online. So, and the oxygen in our oxidation ponds is improving, so the risk of an odour event is decreasing. So, it's pretty positive news from the treatment plant.
So what are the current water restrictions in Christchurch? Can we wash our cars?
At the moment, the water supply, we've got sufficient water to meet, the city's needs. There is a total water ban in terms of outdoor irrigation in place, and that's staying in place. But people can wash cars, they can, use water sensibly, still conserve it, no long showers, those sort of things, because that water used inside the house goes into the sewer system. Water outside the house tends to go into the stormwater system or into the garden, so that's not such a big concern. But we don't have, our system's not robust enough to allow people to start irrigating gardens. That does place quite a big demand on the system. And seeing we're coming into sort of the winter months now, there shouldn't be the need for that anyway. So that'll buy us some time to get the water infrastructure strengthened. But things like washing cars and working around the house, those sort of activities are fine as long as people are sensible with it. So, we are trying to get people back to normal as fast as we can.
After the break, it's students to the fore. Welcome back. English language students from overseas are showing a vote of confidence in New Zealand and Christchurch.
49 students from Japan were welcomed at the Southern Cross Language Institute in Christchurch by Mayor Bob Parker, and the students responded with a song. The Institute's director, John Koopman, says this is an increase in the number of students from last year. They are here for a one-year full-time course in English as a foreign language. Mayor Parker said it was a vote of confidence in Christchurch that the students were returning.
Well, I just love the courage and the positivity and the fact that they are mature enough to understand, coming from a country that has a lot of earthquakes, the real situation here. So it's a great vote of confidence for us as a city to see this happening. So there's a lot of things one could talk about too, their experiences in the earthquake in Japan, the Sensai earthquake, and the issues around Fukushima, the nuclear power station. I'm sure they've got a lot of stories to tell and things to share, and their feelings at this time would be very insightful. But they're just a delightful group of people. They sang me a song and made Joanna and I feel very welcome, and they should feel welcome here. Like we said during the tragedy when we lost those young Japanese students, you are our family now, and that's the way we will respect you, and we respect you for your courage and your choice in coming here. I think that as we emerge from this time and build one of the seismically safest cities in the world, our appeal will improve greatly, because all parents, when their children go away to study, share the emotion of concern and worry, and that we have been through this turmoil, and that we have a wonderful group of young Japanese women who want to come here at Southern Cross to pursue their educational opportunities and values is wonderful, and it's heartening, and it adds to this city, and it adds to the relationship we have as two nations.
Meanwhile, New Zealand students with student loans who are living overseas are being encouraged to pay them back to help rebuild Christchurch.
Now, after this New Zealand of the Year award in early February, within a week or two we had this disaster down here, and I was thinking, what could I do as the profile I had around that to do something to assist with the Canterbury rebuild? And I realised, well, I'm an academic, I work in a university, and we've got this problem of all these students living abroad who've studied here. The Kiwis have got their loans and gone and lived overseas, and many of them are in default. We've got 35,000 New Zealanders living abroad who are not paying back their student loans, and the figures are extraordinary. It's $2 billion, and of course it's held in overseas currency, and that's exactly what we need now. I mean, when we donate to help Christchurch within New Zealand, we're sharing the pain, but it's still costing the whole country. So getting funds coming from offshore, I thought would be a tremendous boost. So that was the idea behind it, as an appeal to our young people and say, well, look, we've got a game changer here for the country. Think about this again and consider repaying your loan.
So what's it called?
It's called the Heroic Educated Kiwi Expatriates Campaign, or HECA for short. HECA in Maori means to reduce, so reduce your loan to help New Zealand rebuild Christchurch was the idea. So I mean, the idea of it is the title, Heroic Educated Kiwi, is a lot of these young people are thinking, to hell with it, I don't really want to think about this loan. I don't really like the fact that I had a loan in the first place. So there's a lot of bitterness around it. And I thought, try to turn it around and see it in a positive way, that because a lot of our young people abroad are they're wanting to do something to help the country after what's happened to Christchurch. And so think of this as a positive. I mean, you're doing something in your own interest, but you're doing it to help the country. Maybe naive, maybe that kind of approach to people's sense of wanting to do the right thing is a little naive. The government's taken a tougher line. They've said, we'll hunt them down and make them pay. But, so I'm sort of playing good cop to Stephen Joyce's bad cop, I suppose.
Now, let's just get a little bit more specific. So the student loan money is not going directly to Christchurch?
No, we couldn't do that. It would require an act of Parliament to actually redirect money that goes into the taxation fund, essentially, to be specifically directed that way. And so I felt the simplest thing to do to get this thing going quickly was say, yeah, look, let's be honest, it's not going directly to Christchurch, it's simply going into the coffers of IRD. But look, we're all in this together as a country, and the taxpayer contribution for the rebuild is going to be the order of $8 billion. So anything that can help assist that ultimately does help Christchurch and helps the whole country. So yeah, you're right, it's not directed there, and of course people might prefer to make individual donations. But there's a wider problem that we've got in New Zealand around these student loans, and so it's worth having that conversation anyway.
After the break, the booze ban in the suburbs. Welcome back to CTV News. The alcohol ban in suburbs is starting to bite as authorities begin to enforce it.
As CTV News reported on Monday, an alcohol ban will be in place in public spaces in Riccarton and Ilam for 6 months starting May the 19th. The suburbs have reported an influx of bar customers since the February earthquake, and there are particular problems in the Riccarton, Ilam, Papanui and Maryvale areas. We spoke to Councillor Helen Broughton about the issue on Monday.
So post the earthquake, there seems to be a lot more disorder, and certainly the police record that, and there seems to be disorder around parties in the Riccarton Ilam area, which wasn't such a feature before. Basically, the problems before were when young people were at the pubs and walking home, and on top of that now, we've got parties largely by students, possibly other young people, and those parties are spilling over onto the street.
These suburbs have become the focus of weekend socialising that previously happened in the central city.
What's happened is that we've had displacement because we've lost about 130 odd premises in the inner city, and so you've got all those people that used to drink in the inner city are now dispersing out to local premises. Most of the trouble that we're having is in and around licensed premises, say around Riccarton, some of the Maryvale area, some of the Papanui area, and it's mainly people consuming off-licence alcohol. So they're drinking in their cars, they're drinking on the street, which tends to aggravate problems in and around those premises because it's uncontrolled drinking. So that's a problem for us.
Police and the Riccarton Wigram Community Board want the ban to stop alcohol-fuelled trouble in the suburbs since the quake. They believe the ban will help.
It gives us another tool to move people on. Because we have the discretion to either arrest, to summons, to warn, it just gives us that ability to move people away. And most people will actually abide by the liquor ban. Most people are reasonable. Most of the students that we've dealt with out there are reasonable until they get to that point of intoxication, then reason goes out the window. So that's our biggest problem. So that's how the ban will help. It actually help mitigate some of that risk in those areas. And a lot of these areas are residential. They're not used to large numbers of people migrating from one place to another, from party to party, from licensed premise to party, from back and forth. And so when you get all that migration, that's when you get the problems on the street.
Sergeant Lawn says there are a number of things that police would like to see come from the ban.
A mitigation of the problems in and around Riccarton, just the students taking, and it's not just students, it's a whole range of people in and around that area consuming alcohol in controlled environments, in licensed premises. It will help stop the spill out onto the street from parties. People are still going to party, but it means that they'll probably be more considerate about drinking out on the streets, and the neighbours probably won't have as much problems. But that's a huge consideration. I think things are going reasonably well. We get these things. We're in a state of change, and it will take time for these things to sort of come to the surface, deal with them, and move on.
And he believes there is a bigger drinking issue in New Zealand.
My thoughts about how to change our drinking culture, which is let's drink 10, 15 standard drinks before we go out and not go out till 12 o'clock at night. Let's put the price of alcohol up for off licence. Let's make it more the difference between off and on licence less, so that we find people make a better choice. They go out earlier, they consume food at these premises, and a lot of them have got really good food now, really good food. They put beans on and they cater for people so that people aren't drinking in uncontrolled drinking environments. They're not drinking cheap alcohol at home, getting off their face and then trying to get into licensed premises. That's a recipe for disaster, and that's what we're seeing at the moment.
The Christchurch City Council will debate a motion tabled by City Councillor Aaron Kewen, who's calling for a 1-year liquor ban for all of Christchurch City and Banks Peninsula. Sergeant Lawn thinks this idea could work.
It's not a bad idea. It's whether it is legislatively palatable. That's the thing. Do we have enough evidence to say that banning alcohol in public places is a good thing? Overseas, it's used, and it's used well overseas. And in most places, you can't drink in public. It's not a bad thing, but it's whether the public will tolerate that as another step on their freedoms to do whatever they like. You have to balance that with, is alcohol a huge problem? Yes, it is. So it's those people making those decisions and council, etc., weighing that up.
Investigations are now looking into bans in Papanui and Maryvale.
Age Concern is up and running again in its own building.
When the earthquake struck, Age Concern, located in Cashel Street, found themselves relocated out of town. Their CEO, Paul Stevens, said they found themselves with plenty to do.
This building was within the cordon, and fortunately on the first weekend we managed to secure alternative premises, and we were up and running in the following week, and that was based in plant and food research at Lincoln. Well, we don't have a lot of clients actually visit here. Our staff tend to go out to the clients, our, if I may call them field staff, so that's our community health nurses and our visitor coordinator. They operated from their homes during those first few weeks. So if you like, the office-based staff with the who tend to do more work by telephone, we were based out at Lincoln.
Mr. Stevens says asking how people were affected is a hard question to answer.
As we know, it follows up on the September quakes, and there were still stories of people who were badly impacted from those quakes. But it's one of those questions that's very difficult to answer, because it goes right across the spectrum, and you can have from very resilient people to very frail people, and you can have very frail people who are making out they're very resilient, and very resilient people, and vice versa. But there was certainly, in the early days, we received a lot of calls for some remedial work on homes. So this is helping where there's perhaps chimneys come down and the likes, and our nurses, as I say, were operating straight away, and they were trying to contact their more vulnerable clients. But of course, like most other businesses in town, a lot of our information was stored within the building, although fortunately our health database is web-based, so that could be accessed remotely. If we take our accredited visitor service, and we have about 120 visitors who commit to visiting someone every week, and a number of those visitors, for their own reasons, perhaps had to relocate, and a number of the clients did. So there's been a degree of rebuilding that service. Our community health nurses are run off their feet. A lot of, or big increase in their roles and responsibilities. And one of the community health nurses has been seconded to do the Canterbury Recovery Support Services project, and her role's around assisting people, elderly people who need to be relocated as a result of damage to their homes, either temporarily or when the place needs to be repaired or rebuilt.
Now, let's take a look at your weather.
Hi everyone, it's great to be back. Thanks so much for joining us. It was a cloudy day over Canterbury today with showers about as a low pressure system moved over the South Island. Highs range between 14 and 15 degrees for most places. Arthur's Pass reached a cool 12 degrees. Let's take a look at what tomorrow holds in store. Those of you in Kaikoura can enjoy a fine sunny Thursday with some high cloud later and northeasterly breezes. 18 is your high with a low of 11 overnight tonight. Plenty of sunshine in Hanmer tomorrow. Light northerly winds, a small amount of cloud and a high of 20 degrees make for a very pleasant day. Fine Thursday in North Canterbury with sunny periods and some high cloud. Moderate northeasterly winds turn light and northerly by late afternoon. 18 is your high. Enjoy a fine sunny Thursday for the Garden City with some high cloud later on and northeasterly breezes. Some light rain about in the afternoon, 11 degrees overnight, and tomorrow your high is 18. Sunny periods and increasing high cloud for your Thursday in Ashburton. Moderate northeasterly winds develop in the afternoon and 18 is your high. Timaru sees a fine day ahead with sunny periods and some high cloud with light northerly winds. 18 is your high for the day. Looking to other areas now, temperatures range between 17 and 19 degrees. Showers for Arthur's Pass and Greymouth, mostly fine everywhere else with some afternoon cloud. Looking ahead now, cloudy on Friday with some late rain developing in the afternoon and moderate northeasterly winds. Early rain clears and sunny periods increase during the morning on Saturday. We hope just in time for your Saturday sport. Mild northerly winds freshening during the afternoon. That's the weather everyone. Thanks for joining us. See you tomorrow.
And that's CTV News. I'm Rob Cope-Williams.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.